Welcome to NeuroNoodle's Neurofeedback and Neuropsychology Podcast, featuring tech legend Jake Gunkelman. He's the man who has read well over 500,000 brain scans, and Dr. Mari Swingle, author of iMinds. Our goal is to provide information and promote options for better mental health. The NeuroNoodle Podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you. I need one of those. Hey, it's that time of year again. Dr. Mari will be popping in a little bit, but football season, and of course, the fencing response.
Yeah, and it's understandable that people will expect the classic one arm out, one arm in fencing response. On guard. Yeah. But that's not always going to be the case. There's decorticate rigidity as well. And in that case, you don't have an arm extended. You retract your arms. Your hands turn inward, and your arms come up, and your feet go straight. Both of them, you go rigid. In the decorticate is a bit different than having a brain stem. Now, if you have a brain stem on one side, you'll end up having the extension on one side and the contraction on the other because of the cortex, and that's the fencing. One side brain stem, basically, the other side cortical. And if you've got both extended, that's a decorticate rigidity, is cerebellar and brain stem. But if you're tucked in, that's. And I've got a little bit of a graphic on that. It's the wrong software. Looks like the same icon, but it's not. And so basically, fencing response, extension of one side, and that's decerebrate. Again, upper brain stem, midbrain. And the other one is
I don't think we have the sharing on yet. We got Dr. Mari just joining us.
Good morning.
Hello, Dr. Mari. We're going over the fencing response.
Okay.
We've had a journalist criticize us for our post that we put up a couple days ago that it wasn't exactly the fencing pose, and Jay is about to show us. Jay, before you do that, maybe I should show the video to everybody, to the class, of what we're talking about.
Yeah. That's a good idea, so we're all on the same page as to what the behavior looked like.
Oh, wait, that's...
Done. Done.
This one got us about 19 million views. It's the slapping, the pro slapping league or whatever. Okay. 19 million. All right. I mean, this is silliness.
It was funny. I mean, when it was Bugs Bunny, that was one thing, but we're talking about real humans here.
Here, look at this. Now watch his arms. Watch his arms.
He was doing the blocking and got the stinger. A bad stinger.
And his hands are curled in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now it's over, but at the beginning, you'll see his arms come up and they're curved in. This is not an extension as much as a contraction. And there's a decerebrate and a decorticate rigidity. Decerebrate on one side and decorticate on the other is one arm in, one arm out. Classic fencing on guard position. So that happens when the upper brain stem, midbrain on one side gets the ding and the other side's cortical. And that's a mixed decerebrate decorticate posturing.
Yeah.
And if somebody in the media said it's not that classic posture, well, so what? I mean, the brain got damaged, and it was just cortical, both sides curved in. And I've got if I can share screen here, let me share screen. One versus the other. Decorticate, again, is cortex. Decerebrate is not. And what we're going to look at is the difference. So extension of one side, that's decerebrate. Again, brainstem, upper brainstem and midbrain. And the flexion on the other side, where you your hands turn in and your arms come up, not out, and that's a flexion, and that's decorticate. This is a decerebrate posturing. Arms are straight, and you might have curled fingers, but you're basically extended. This is the decorticate. When you lose the cortex, the arms come up, your hands curl in, and this was more of what was happening. And so it was only one side and not the other for some people, and they have a classic posturing of fencing. But if the person on the field making the decision as to whether you need to go back in or not doesn't understand decerebrate, decorticate, fencing, all of the above, you're going to end up sending people back out on the field when they shouldn't have been sent back onto the field. That was no stinger. That was a decorticate rigidity, which is spreading depression. Now, it's not depression, boo, sadness. This is back at Hewlings-Jackson. He was a neurologist who had epilepsy and migraines, and he described the spread across the cortex of a suppression of activity, the glia and neurons suppressing their activity with migraine and also with trauma, and in epilepsy as well. So the rate of spread, all that was described by Hewlings-Jackson. So decorticate rigidity, decerebrate rigidity, both of those have spreading depression associated with them, different spots in the brain, and you can see the end result is posturing. So it's don't let media judge, don't let coaches judge. Don't let people on the sideline judge unless they have a medical background, especially in neurology. The concussion protocol shouldn't have somebody who doesn't understand the neuroscience of it making any kind of a decision as to whether somebody should go back on the field or not. Get the hell out of the way. Let the professional look at things, tell you what's going on, tell you whether this patient is okay enough to go back on the field. Was this just a stinger on a shoulder? But if the person has been posturing, it doesn't have to be classical fencing. It could be decorticate or a decerebrate, and those are bilateral. So, media expert, put a cork in it. Yeah, that's all I can say.
Let me here. I'm going to share back, okay? Because look, what we're trying to do is, number one, you hit, like you say, you have the media trying to make a call what happens, okay? And they bring out a stinger, okay? A stinger. I know what a stinger is. That's when you get the pinched nerve in the side of your neck, and you got the burning sensation, and you don't posture. It's like you go numb. You can't feel it, okay? Yeah. So even my background is these podcasts, and I know that when I see the hands go like that, that's not good. You're not going back in the game till we get a scan and see what's going on. What I wanted to do was show you Tagovailo, the NFL quarterback from Miami, because that's how this all got going, because that's where the fingers went in. Jay, can I show that for 1 second? Okay.
Sure.
And then you guys can take over.
And I know Mari's loaded for bear on this one as well. So you gotta cut her loose too.
Let's go through this one and then
okay.
Should I jump in?
Go ahead.
This may be inappropriate.
Okay. Yeah, no, what I wanted to kind of do is place this in the bigger picture of society and culture, and the value of persons. And I think, we went through this with the Industrial Revolution in terms of, unions where, people went to work and essentially you might not get home from work, the work conditions, our coaches like the floor whippers, et cetera. So, I mean, that's one kind of component. And I'm really wanting to launch the debate, do professional athletes, essentially need unions and protection at this point? Because whether it's the media or, bless the fans, but the fans, again, this is all about enthusiasm for the game. Sure, they admire the players, but who is out there actually protecting the persons? Now, I'm not against professional sports. I don't want anybody to go down that road. In fact, I have worked with MMA players, cage fighters, I call them. I've also worked on the other side, with internet gamers, and boy, oh boy, do we get major brain deregulation, one from process exposure and the other from brain damage. But these are adults, and they come, they're very clear that they want to be top of their game. They're very, very clear about the risk and the damage. And, they come for help to mitigate the damage. They come to help for help with sleep. They come for help with stress tolerance. All the things that elite athletes come for, plus the mitigation of the brain damage or the brain deregulation that they are 100% aware of and consenting to. Okay. So if we want to reframe this, good old American gladiators, if you are a mature male and you want to play the game where literally you are going against the sword, okay, and in this game that your brain could get killed. I mean, you're crashing into each other. We all think it's about the ball, but it's really about the persons. So
Dr.
again,
Marie,
with adults,
the NFL has one of the biggest.
The
NFL has one of the biggest player unions that are out there. I mean, we're talking multi-million dollars. And
what are they doing? These men should not be sent back. They are not protecting the players, as far as I can see. I mean, show me some evidence that these players are being protected, or forget about it, and that's why I say it's the gladiator model. Okay, you sign up for this, you're going to be a billionaire, you're going to be a star, and you're going to die young, and you're going to get hurt. Yes, no, right? And but I really hate the duplicity, the contradiction here. And if I could just finish off my diatribe, we can get in. But my major concern is the children. Okay, because when do these athletes start training? Typically, young male athletes in, physical sports, or I'm going to even play with combat sports, they get serious between 9 and 11. Okay, whose choice is this? Who's consenting to this? And if we really, really want to have some fun here, is this a form of child abuse? What other dimension of sorry, I'm so enthusiastic about this, I'm losing my words, but I mean, we have seatbelts in cars, we have all kinds of regulations within playgrounds, etc., except for training in sports. And I think we really, really need to look at this and again get bodies in there. Okay, you want to train for the sport, A, B, C, D, these are the rules until this age. And then when you're 18 or 19, then you can consent to be a gladiator. And then we bring out the swords. Yeah, so I have issues with minimization of actual brain injury, the terminology, the field of entertainment versus the field of medicine. And I'm 100% with Jay that nobody should be commenting on this except people with knowledge.
I agree that a union is a very good idea to help players have a mass voice. But I don't think a player deserves to be the one to decide to go back in the game either, because they want to go back in the game.
Yeah.
Even, it's the Monty Python, deal. The chop of one arm off. Okay, I'm still ready. The other arm, both legs. Come on, bring it on.
That's the nature,
So
the personality, the brain drive of
yeah,
the athlete. Exactly. So that's why you need people to protect
yeah,
people.
yeah.
And again, we all have our limitations of knowledge. I mean, when something happens to me, sure, I'm an intelligent woman, I'm fairly educated, but there's some knowledge that I just don't have. And I go to other professionals to medically counsel me, protect me, etc. So yeah, again, why is there a doctor on the field? Okay, is that doctor to assess whether this player can go back in to advance the game, or is that doctor there to assess the damage of this person? So it's the value of the person versus the value of the game. And I think, yeah, when you have lawyers, there's one for each side. I don't think it should get to that. I think we should start to have regulations and agreements. But yeah, I'm on a roll. My last little one that I know I've spoken about before, and I think it bears repeating, is our stereotype of the athlete, from 1920s up to 1970s, is the big galoot, the stupid guy. Okay, they're not stupid, they're brain injured, right? So these young men that were having lots of trouble in high school, I think there was a lot of brain injury already there. And I think we need to respect people.
Luckily, Pete just got stingers.
Well, it's you do get carried off with that because you can't move,
Yeah.
So that would happen quite a bit. That's why you saw in the 80s those big neck rolls to really have your helmet straight. But
Yeah.
that's just like being in a NASCAR with more protection. The car's flipping, you're getting whacked no matter what. Jay, the fingers curling here. I'll stop sharing with Tua here.
You'll also see some extension fingers as you watch in it too.
There. So he whacks his head on the side. Now he's rolling over. So that same media guy that's criticizing us, he say that, well, that's not a fencing response.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
A media guy should be in the media and not necessarily.
That's my point. I don't think we should be responding to a media guy. If we get a medical doctor who wants to get into a wonderful debate based on a scope of practice and discipline, I'm all for it. I assume Jay is as well.
Well, you had a Michigan State kid get hit like that, and he was put back in the game in the same half. Mm-hmm. So it's still happening.
There's a big push to get. I mean, the player wants to get back on the field. The team wants him back on the field. The coaches want him back on the field. And unless he has a very strong advocate that's looking at them medically, they're not going to be well served. They'll be put back on the field when they shouldn't be there. In brain trauma, let's say it's just that it's not a severe one like decorticate rigidity, decerebrate rigidity, but they just get a concussion. Just a concussion.
Just a concussion.
Well, yeah, if it's just a concussion, well, a concussion is essentially, if you got slugged in the shoulder, your shoulder swells up a little bit. Well, your brain gets whacked, it swells up, but there's no way to swell out. It compresses. And the blood vessels in it, the small blood vessels in it, will be compressed. Some won't have enough diameter to have adequate flow to get enough oxygen and glucose to the surface. And those cortical areas will be starved. If you make them work hard, the hypoxia that you're going to create will create cell death. And now, if you didn't put them back out in the field and you let them rest appropriately, the vasculature can heal over time with some gentle therapy. But if you put them back out in the field and you put 100% demand back on it, you can create cell death. It's just as bad as it sounds. Hypoxia, glutamate cascade, cell death. And what about that sounds like the right move? that putting a player back on the field too early without having healed from the concussion, much less decerebrate or decorticate rigidity, which is a major blow, not just as a concussion on some cortical location, but deep in the brain, brainstem, upper brainstem, and cortex. So let's let the experts, not the media, comment on whether this is a serious blow. If it's the wrong word, the media guy can correct me,
We make it
unless
simple
it's a medical word, in which
anybody
case
watching or
maybe they
listening.
should zip it.
Can we make it simple? After a hit like that, a head-to-head hit, okay, ground or whatever, if you see the hands doing anything like that, you're not going back into the game. That's it.
Yeah.
Simple rule, right? Is that too harsh, Jay?
It's not too harsh, and there should be a medical professional making the determination because, oh, he was waving at his mother.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't.
But they have instant replay. They have so many cameras to look at instant replay, and I believe they have coaches and medical professionals the NFL has supposedly that watch these hits. If that's what they're doing to determine if it's a serious hit or not, it should be a standard that if the hands, the rigidity, whatever you call it, Jay, if that is witnessed,
if it curls in or if it goes out, you've got yourself a problem.
In so many other sports now, you do instant replay, 5-10 times. They'll pause the game. Like within a game, 10 or 5 minutes is a huge amount of time. They'll pause that to see whether a goal is valid. Why can't we pause to that degree to ensure that a person will not have cell death, right? And it should be the medical professionals just going over that. But again, it's the big cultural issue. If we want to say, okay, these guys are signing up, death on the field, cell death is part of the job, pay them some more money. Okay, but I just don't like this, pulling the hood over people's eyes, calling, extreme brain injury something else. That's my key issue here. We need transparency.
Yeah. Some people will dismiss cell death as well. Let's say you go to an evening lecture, and it's a dinner lecture, and you've got wine and food in front of you, and you drink a couple glasses of wine with your dinner, and you're listening to the person blab on about whatever they're blabbing on about. You've lost lots of brain cells from that alcohol consumption. Lots of them. But if you've paid attention to the lecture, you've grown new connections. And you've overcome the loss of some of those brain cells by growing new connections. So, cell death is awful because you don't get them back, but there are ways to end up fostering new connections. So there's therapeutic intervention if somebody's had an injury on the field to try to put their brain back together and make enough connections so they maintain functionality. But cell death is awful, but we do it to ourselves a lot in the first place.
Yeah, I really don't want to confuse, some, lifestyle things or light or heavy light. I mean, we're not talking about extreme alcoholism here. That's a totally different thing. But I really would like to, in our community, we talk about cell death. We know that this is part of natural processes like skin cells shed as well. Our hair falls out in various cycles. All of these things are very, very normal. And of course, there are many things that we can do to accelerate that process or decelerate. So that's your glass of wine. But I really, really don't want to feed or compare normal cycles within humans and lifestyle choices and how they influence that with what's going on here. Okay, this is let's pick another word. The process is cell death, but it's like I don't know, 10% of your brain, this whole region just goes. Like, how can we put this in a lay people's terms to understand? Obviously for our population, we can use some of the medical.
After you've damaged an area in the brain, the cells that die in there, you've lost some density. That's called encephalomalacia, a softness and in the brain. And there's three kinds of encephalomalacia based on the color. Now, the only way you see the color is if you actually take the top off and look. So as you don't see it in a scan, but you can see it if you're the neurosurgeon and you actually look. There's white encephalomalacia, where something blocked the flow and there's no blood getting to that area, so the color is essentially white. There's red, which means it blocked, you lost cells, but now it's revascularized. That's red because there's not much cell density and you get a lot of red there. And there's also yellow, and that the softness of the cortex is due to atherosclerotic plaque buildup. You've junked up the brain in that area enough to have it go soft. So,
for our general audience and the media criticizing us, okay, could we just essentially describe this as absolute simplicity, that you get mushy holes in the brain? Is that a good way to say it so people understand?
I think the lay level understanding would be that you get a soft, mushy spot. Yeah.
Thank you. So when you get a hit
your
like
neurosurgeon's
that,
the only one who's going to know about the color, so don't worry about
I'm
matching
not worried
it with
about
your
that. I
lipstick
said, but
or something,
have kind of
so.
two levels of folks listening to us, and of course the people who practice along with us. We want to share at the higher level, but I think you get mushy holes in the brain.
So if you get swelling, Jay, and then you have to wait for the swelling to go down, you do an EEG to look at the damage. Well, like, what do you do post? Unfortunately, this kid has to go back to class.
And hyperbaric helps because the compressed blood vessels don't get oxygen downstream efficiently, and hyperbaric will end up helping you recover from the trauma on the short run.
That must be the media.
Politicians. It's that time of year, you know.
Why don't they get head injuries? Oh, they already have.
A job requirement. So, and it's not just football. I mean, swimming. It's unless you're a backstroker, you don't normally hit your head. And you might hit your finger against the wall. I mean, there are some sports that are inherently a little less problematic, but there are very few sports that don't have a risk. Wrestling, obviously a risk. Basketball. I mean, nobody's like whacking you in the head. Well, sometimes, but so somebody goes off and goes nuts and swings at somebody. But you can fall to the ground and hit your head, and that's enough to take you out, in the same way as a blow to the head in football. And you don't have a helmet. People are pretty good at knowing how to fall. If you've been an athlete for a long enough time, you can spin around to kind of catch yourself and roll with it, but not every time.
Yeah, there's so much technology.
I don't know of a sport where you don't have a risk. Soccer, headers, hockey.
Hockey and now soccer. But I think I'd like to interject that there are a lot of sports that have calculated risk, right? And of course, there's a certain percentage of things that you can't control. But it's something very special, shall we say, about football, North American football, and hockey. And the other one is bobsledding, right? Yeah, where we just shake the brain all the time. Yeah, but again, I'm not for exactly.
Yeah.
Adult shaken baby syndrome. I mean, we want to be able to play, we want to be able to enjoy ourselves, but we just have so many inherent contradictions. I mean, if we go back to kids, you want risky play. It teaches respect for danger. It teaches boundaries, etc. But then when we get into professional play, what should the boundaries be, and who should be deciding them? I think that's what this all comes down to.
Yeah. I'll leave you one zinger, Dr. Marie, before you got to split. You ever hear of pudding caps?
Pudding caps?
Yes, pudding caps. All right, good. Put it down, write it down. In the ancient times, the toddlers going around, they would have this protective cap on to protect their heads from falling down in their formative years. Jay, you've heard of that.
Yeah. I'm old enough to probably have had to have one on me even, and we are born with twice as many brain cells as we end up with as a teenager. We prune neurons and connections. The ones you use get fostered. The ones you don't use, you lose them. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
And
but it's
if
pruning,
you fire together, you wire together.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, Dr. Murray, why shouldn't toddlers wear helmets?
Never. I mean, that's the most absurd. If you really want to create a child that's going to injure themselves, overprotect them, right? I'm not a big fan of floaty devices for kids learning how to swim. They get way too confident in the deep end, and you take off those floaty things, or they just take a big leap when an adult who can swim isn't around, and you have trouble. No, you want systematic exposure to risky play, whether it's with scissors or walking on stones or these type of things. But obviously, in the early years, with parents or guardians or slightly older children around who help them learn the boundaries. I'm not for putting, keeping the training wheels of life on anything, but I mean, you have to read my book there, Pete, because I go into extensive detail on that. That we don't have respect for danger because we haven't been exposed to it enough. But back to the sports, this is another level of danger. And my issue is who's consenting to it, okay? And who's making the choices, and why are they making the choices?
Money.
Money makes the world go round. So be it. Be it. But
I've got a lot of damage, and I've earned every bit of it. So.
Yeah. Dr. Marie, I know you got to split. Go anytime. Yeah. I'm just going to keep going with Jay. Right. Jay, there.
Okay. All righty. Take care.
Bye, all righty. Bye bye.
Jay, good to see you again.
Jay, there's so many data points that we can have out there now. They have sensors that measure G forces in the helmets. You have the athletes wearing these sensors on their chest so they can check their speed. Do you think there's some type of number that the head should experience as far as G forces to concussions? That I don't think they're sharing all these numbers because I don't think they want to, but wouldn't it make sense to track how many collisions the head has collected?
Yeah, and you realize that now they see CTE not with just the major hits. You don't have to go posturing on the field to end up with CTE. This is continuous whacking. The lineman gets hit upside the head pretty much every play. Now, none of those are major concussions, but there's, brain trauma. And the older you are, the more atrophy your brain has had, the more it flops around when you end up getting hit with things. So you'll see young players recover from hits fairly well, and older players end up suffering more damage. When we're pudding cap age, our brains are all puffy. There's no space in there when we whack. Some of the neurons that got whacked are the ones you would have been losing anyway. So if we didn't have a brain that could recover from trauma, the birth canal would have all of us being epileptic. So our head gets squeezed as we're born.
Yeah, if it's
our cortex gets our cortex gets squeezed, but the neurons and the connections aren't there yet to end up being damaged in the way they would be if you were more fully developed. So, luckily, however the design of us came about, our early years we have more protective capacity, and by my age, just touch me and I bruise, so so I've got a new dog, and without trying at all. If he jumps up and just touches me with a claw, I got bruises on my arms. It's not, and the same thing. If somebody were to grab me, I'd end up with a handprint. So
Right.
but I've been on steroids for 32 years. So
No swelling.
my skin is my skin looks like a 95-year-old. I'm 74, so.
Jay, what I'd like to do is I just want to run some of our videos that we've had on the fencing response, because I'm sure it's going to happen again, whether it's college or pro or even high school. I just want you to just give comment on what you're seeing, and because there's different types. Okay. We'll start with Alante Brown.
Before we see them, if you see both extended, that is that's again a decorticate decerebrate rigidity. If you see both curled, that's decorticate. If you see one out, one in, that's the fencing response. So when we look at the hands, look to see contraction, extension as lateral or unilateral, and that'll classify things for you.
All right, let's start with the power slap league here, our favorite.
Deliberate stupidity epitomized.
I know, but
my
it's
goodness.
19 million people can't be wrong, can they?
Yeah.
Let us know what's going on here. 1, 2, whack.
And one extended, one contracted.
Okay.
His left hand has got fingers out. His right hand is clenched up.
Okay, got it. Okay, so that's the power slap. Let us move over to
and the fact that one side got it and one didn't. The cortex on one side and the brain stem on the other. And
okay, here's hockey for us.
Yeah, both extended.
Okay, got it. Okay. You
can't see the hands in a hockey glove.
Yeah, I know. But
you got both arms out and extended, but not contracted in.
Yeah. Here's the most famous one, Tua. With people are freaking out about these fingers. What's going on?
Again, the extension is the decerebrate, decorticate rigidity, get them tucked in.
And he was sent back in the game. Okay.
Yeah, and it didn't do him any favors. Yeah, rugby has definitely got a whack in the head sort of a thing going on in rugby. And it's hard to see for sure. It looked like both looked at first like both went up, but there's arms. We saw hands contracted.
Yeah, they went up and then in. Okay, and then most recently, let's see. This was just this past weekend.
Yeah. Boom. And they're both contracted. He's not extending out. They're contracted. And now they said, it's such a good sign he's got his leg moving. Well, that's just that's a good sign that his spinal cord is intact at least. But
ruptured,
But having a twitchy leg afterwards, I don't know. He didn't sever his spine. That's always a good thing. But I don't know that that's such a good sign for recovery, other than just that he didn't end up with a spinal.
I just don't. I don't care what can a doctor on the sideline, tell without getting the fMRI.
In a major area, they usually have a small scanner actually available. It's not unusual to have in the stadium scanning devices so that they could actually get a quick image.
But don't you get swelling from that? Or maybe you don't, and they scanned it and they let them go back in. But To get that rigidity, to me, that's the line you just got to say no mas.
Yeah, and the swelling is not as easy to see in an MRI as a bleed. And a bleed is really the thing that they're worried about, because that can be fatal, and you don't want to lose a player like that. And if there's a bleed, there's ways to handle it. High doses of steroid, drilling holes to relieve the pressure, and there's ways to handle subdurals. Epidurals, you've got to be in there so fast. It's hard to catch everybody with an epidural. You can go within minutes to hours and be passed.
And I didn't even bring up like Junior Seau, the players that had bad TBI and they committed suicide. What's going on there? Because they know the end is coming and they just don't want to deal with it, or it's hard to put yourself in that guy's shoes. But
Robin Williams didn't have TBI. He had what people thought was Parkinson's disease, but it ended up being a different form of dementia, Lewy body.
Yeah.
Lewy body looks like Parkinsonism, but it comes and goes. And when it comes and you've lost your motor function quite a bit, but that comes back. What happens is that Lewy body also has hallucinations associated with it, and mental decline. That's pretty major. Mm-hmm. And if you realize that you've got a progressive dementia where you're going to be stiff and rigid, you can live with that a lot better than a dementia where you're going to be crazy and hallucinating. And since it comes and goes and comes and goes and is progressive, you kind of realize, oh, I recovered for a while. Do I want to be that way again? And there are recurring things in medicine where suicidality is not uncommon. Cluster headaches, as an example. They sometimes were called a suicide headache. So if you see something where the end is known and nasty, quite often people will choose not to continue. Now, I think Canada just opened it up for people that had progressive things but weren't anywhere close to the end to be able to choose suicide. And in Switzerland, they have a little kind of a little booth you can climb in and close up, and there's a little suicide chamber that you can get if you're going to do suicide. But the players do it lots of different ways. So.
Well, we haven't even talked about that brain bank in Boston. We're collecting all the brains that from the football players that have passed. They turn it in there, and where are they going to find more data? You can see the data. The guy's laying on the field with his arms like that. You're going to have issues.
Yeah, and the CTE is they're seeing again in people that haven't necessarily had the gigantic quacks, but small, continuous, minor hits. They're not minor. A small concussion is still a concussion. And it may not be posturing, but a concussion is a concussion. And ischemia is ischemia. Post-traumatic ischemia happens with concussions. And if you don't heal from that, and you put yourself back on the field, some cell death is going to happen. And that's going to be contributing to CTE.
Yeah. Well, for moms and dads, we'll sum it up. The NFL season starting tonight as of this recording, and hopefully we don't see any more of these things. To me, the untrained eye, the podcaster, the editor, the guy just looking at this once a week, there's just so much evidence here that people can take control to get to lessen the occurrence of these events. And I think money's standing in the way is my opinion, Jay. But for the parents out there, when you see your kid taking a dinger, they all add up. It'd be nice to be able to quantify what too much is. We don't know. I think you can with the sensors in there. But if you see your kid or any kid going like that and they put them back in the game, yeah, I'll get them out of the game. Jay, what do you say?
Yeah. In fact, if your kid is laying on the ground with posturing, both in, both out, one in, one out, either any of those combinations, you should get them off the field and to a medical professional to be evaluated.
That's independent from.
Yeah, you don't have to wait for the coach.
Yeah,
the coach's desire is to have the player back on the field. Now, they may want them back on the field healthy, but they're not the one to be able to decide that.
right.
And their desire to have them back on the field is going to overwhelm their medical knowledge, and they're going to end up putting people back in, and unless they have somebody that can overrule them, and concussion protocol supposedly can overrule. Now, yeah, obviously, you see, people posturing and it's a stinger, put it back in. The concussion protocol still has a long way to go before it has enough power to be able to stop the game briefly, evaluate the player and the footage, and allow it to proceed. Pull them from the game probably, and watch it in a booth, but let the game go on. But you've got to be able to evaluate in a more detailed way than somebody on the sideline saying it was a stinger.
Well, Jay Gunkelman, thanks. Good luck on your favorite team. I'm guessing the 49ers, or maybe it's the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't know. Or the Montana State.
NDSU Bison.
Bison.
Go Bison.
All right.
My consultant partner, his Rhodesian Ridgeback, brand new pup. So
hey, woof woof.
Anyway, enjoy your day.
All right, and, Jay, take care.
Don't hit your head, okay?
Yeah, I need a pudding cap. Bye. The NeuroNoodle Podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.